We also then do a ton of application development features. Built into Silverlight 3 is now support for what we call deep linking and navigation, which means that you can now bookmark an application in its various states within the browser. You get forward and back button integration. You can now do SEO support, so you can be indexed by Google and Live, or Bing. Whatever. We have improved text quality, so we now use ClearType. So one of the dings people had about Silverlight with 1 and 2 was that certain font sizes, the fonts would look fuzzy. We now have really crisp ClearType support. We now have multi-touch support, so if you have a kiosk or any machine running Windows 7, the new multi-touch support, you can basically do finger gestures, both single and multiple fingers. Much improved style management. We now have more than 100 built-in controls, ranging from basic input all the way to line of business and charting. And we now have what we call library caching support, which means that you can actually take control libraries as well as any other assemblies that you write. And if you reuse those controls across multiple sites or multiple applications, you only need to download them once and they can actually be reused across multiple of those apps. In the data space, we've always supported data binding with Silverlight. We've made it a lot more powerful with Silverlight 3. We actually support the ability to bind any control property to any CLR object or any property on a CLR object. Which ends up being very powerful. We support both one-way and two-way data binding, so you can actually not only display it, but push things back. We have new validation error templates, which we'll show a little bit later, which allow you to basically display errors in a much more friendly way. We now have we're adding what we call .NET RIA services support, which gives you a multi-tier REST solution. So if you're building a line of business app, a classic scenario is I have validation I want to run on the client and the server. I want to grab some data, I want to work with it, I want to push changes back. Today you end up having to write a lot of code typically if you're building, say, an AJAX solution or you're not using a built-in library when you're building, say, a WinForms or WPF-based app. With .NET RIA services, we're basically building all the smarts to do diff tracking on the client, push those changes, and allow you to write your business validation logic once and apply it both client and server. And that's one of the benefits you get with Silverlight is you can actually take the same .NET code, you can run those business rules on the server, you can run them on the client, you can enable a bunch of great code sharing across. We support server-side data push, so if you want to actually notify clients of changes on the server, we have the ability to do what's called long-held connections or kind of comment-style support, where basically the server can fire an event and notify a bunch of clients immediately that a change happened without them having to continually pull inside a loop. We also, Silverlight 3, are adding much better binary serialization support so that your network traffic between the client and server can be much smaller than it normally would be. We're also then in Silverlight 3 adding out of the browser support, so you can basically build applications that run both inside the browser as well as can run inside the desktop. For Silverlight 3, the main scenarios we're focusing on are kind of media experiences that run outside, kind of companion apps for your websites, as well as what we call kind of lightweight data snacking apps, which I'll show a demo of in a bit. A couple nice things about out of the browser support is it's easy to do. We'll build an app in just a second that does it. It has a very kind of what we call consumer-friendly user experience. We don't show a really bad dialogue that says this is going to kill your machine. Instead, it feels a lot like a favorite. I mean, it's basically because it's running sandbox on the client. You don't have to worry about the machine reading and writing your private files unless you want to grant them access to do it. It also has a built-in auto-update mechanism so that if you change your server or you change your app, just copy it onto the server. Next time the users run it, they can basically get a new version automatically without being prompted. We also have built-in events so you can detect whether the client's online or offline. We actually tie into the network stack, and so anytime that changes, you get an event within your app and you can change your UI appropriately. And it basically, we do things like integrating with Win7, ribbon or the taskbar. You can save on the desktop on the Mac. You can save it desktop on Windows, start menu, etc. So with that, let's write some code. So what we'll do is we're going to create. Let's create a new project here. And one of the templates you get when you build a Silverlight app is called the Silverlight navigation template. So what do you want to call this?
London.net user.
Okay. It's a very exciting name. So anyway, we're going to create this app. When you create a Silverlight app, one of the things we basically prompt you to do is, do you want to actually create a server-side app at the same time? You don't need to. You can actually use Silverlight with any web server out there. It could be an Apache server. But obviously we know a lot of people use ASP.NET. And so you can actually create a server-side project, either a web app, a website, or an MVC-based project. Hit OK, and what this will go ahead and do is create for you both the server-side half of your application as well as the client-side half. So here's the server. Let me show off my cool zoom-in support. And so basically, that's the client, that's the server. And so you can see we create some dummy ASP.NET pages that host it. The default app has this thing called mainpage.xaml, which is the main page of your app. An app.xaml, which we'll talk about in a second, which basically is your application level things. And then it has a folder called views and a folder called assets. Your assets folder has, by default, a style sheet called styles.xaml. And your views basically, by default, this app has an about page, an error window, as well as a home page. And you can add additional views as you want within the application. When you run it, it'll pop up the ASP.NET app, launch within Firefox. You'll notice there's a home and about tab. Couple things to note, you get back and forward button integration, even though this is entirely a Silverlight-based app. Watch it go back and forth. If you want to make this run offline as well, or out of the browser as well, basically just pull up the properties page for the system. There is a option called Enable Running Application Outside of Browser, which when clicked, runs the browser application outside the browser. Basically, I can say, let's run 800 by 600, and we'll say, this app feels really good when it is 90 degrees. If you want to, you can select icons for what you want the picture to look like, and you can choose whether to GPU accelerate it for hardware. Hit OK. Rebuild. And you'll notice we're rerunning the same app again. By default, I don't have an install button, but I could put an install button that'll the user can click to install the app. Otherwise, they can right-click and they can say install whatever that string is that you specified in that dialog. When you do this, we'll actually show a kind of consumer-friendly install thing. Notice this doesn't have any security prompt. Basically, it feels, again, like a favorite. I can choose to stick on my start menu or my desktop on Windows. On the Mac, you can also add it to the Chrome at the bottom of the desktop. If I hit OK, it's actually going to download the application, save it offline, and open it up outside the browser. So you can see I can close my browser now, have that app running offline. I can pin it, if you're running on Win 7, to the taskbar. And so now I can close this, rerun it. This app can run entirely offline. It doesn't need to hit the web server. Anytime it changes on the web server, we'll automatically download a new version and update it. And again, within the app, you can detect whether or not the network is plugged in and active or not. And so, if you wanted to basically have a dashboard of sales information, if you wanted to have an offline media app, if you just wanted to have, what other kind of companion experience you want, hopefully you see it's fairly easy to go ahead and build one of those and run it like that. And the nice thing is, from a user perspective, if they ever want to get rid of it, again, you can put a remove link, or you can just right-click, hit yes. This just removed everything from my client system of that app. It's now completely clean, and I'm back to my original state. So fairly clean deployment mechanism, fairly easy from a programming perspective in order to take advantage of it. Any questions on that?